Hello, and welcome to Chess Book Reviews 78. I'm going to talk about the Estonian Grandmaster, he's dead now, Paul Keres. But before I do that, I'm going to have a little coffee because I've just made it. Paul Keres was born in 1916 in Estonia, what is known or could be known as one of the buffer states in the USSR. And despite the fact that he was for many years either number 2, number 1, or even number 3 player in the world, he never got the chance of having a match. And he had a match against Alekhine after his form at, say, Avro in 1938, or a match against Botvinnik, given his form in, say, 1960. He might, I don't know, have won. But nerves, the political situation, and obviously the rise of younger players, such as Tao, Bobby Fischer, not to mention Petrosian and Spassky, somehow put the spoke in the wheel. And he wasn't able to come through as he would have liked, as he would have anticipated, and as many, many fans had hoped. I've got an enormous amount of books here to show you. Now, this is a book by Nathan Davinsky and Ray Keane. And it has a short chapter about Keres. It says it's from Estonia, and he deserved to be world champion. His results were consistently outstanding, his games perennially beautiful, and he toppled virtually all the giants at some stage in his career. His victims include Alekhine, Capablanca, Botvinnik, Smyslov, Tal, Fischer. Yet at crucial moments, he seemed unable to summon that decisive extra ounce of determination that will push him to the very top. In 1948, Keres was invited to the 5-man match tournament, which select directly the world champion after the interregnum following Alekhine's death. Alekhine died in 1946. It gives Keres's fantastic record against all his fellow more geniuses, if you will, top grandmasters, definitely, and he ends up with 51%, which, when you consider that some of these people are literally gods, is an amazing tally. Really is amazing. When he died in 1975, I remember it. I think he'd been in dreadful state. I think he died of heart failure. The first book I've got to show you is probably not known to you. There we are. It's a bit of a contrivance, really, because it's not a book by Keres in the literal sense. It is actually games from the American publication Chess Life and Review, but they've been put together with some care. With his notes. There's 22 games, which means that they've got quality, not quantity, and quite a few of the games, not all of them, are by the great man himself. But others again are his colleagues and rivals. And here's a game, for example, from Tallinn 1973. Tallinn 75 was to be his last great success. And I know that I'm deliberately saying this because I always have this story that Bronstein told me that Keres had invited Bronstein, his friend, to play in the tournament, his tournament. And when it was about a week to go before the event, the phone rang and Bronstein said hello. And Keres said something to the effect, hello, are you still okay to come to my tournament? And he just said pal, as he called him. And at that moment he said, "Thank you," and put the phone down. That was the affinity between the two grandmasters, the two friends. I'll just give you an insight and show you what the diagrams are like in this little book. They're slightly unusual, but it's a relaxed and interesting book. And it's published by David Mackay of New York about 40 years ago. And what I recommend you do is look in book dealers, libraries, and see if you can get it still. Very worthwhile and interesting. And the games are grouped around the 1970s, the Fischer-Spassky time and earlier. Now the next book are the early games of Paul Keres. There's 3 books in this series, and like a fool, I let slip one of them. I've only got 2 of the 3. And then notes by Golombek. Look, it's got the old Chestnut and Coalfield sticker in it there. So lovingly put on by B.H. Wood. This starts off his career starting in 1929. Keres played an enormous amount of correspondence chess, which wouldn't happen today. You wouldn't need to. You could play online or whatever. But in those days, opponents were not freely available. So that's how, in fact, the first game is a correspondence game. And he played a lot of unsound, and knowing they were unsound gambits, get some fun and to learn his 2 times table on the chessboard. And it builds up from there. This is not a book for the squeamish. It's very detailed. And some of the diagrams are a little small, which I don't like as I get older. My eyesight's not up to it, but there we are. These all also, it's in descriptive notation, which I know puts off a number of people, which I always think is quite funny because chess is very complex, or can be. And if you can understand chess on any level, even as bad as me, you certainly have the grey matter to understand notations of all sorts. But anyway, there we are. These notes have been translated by Harry Golombek, so you're in good hands. And as I say, Batsford have brought out adaptations of these, which I haven't got. But even these old ones, I think it's Ratlish and Keegan Paul. No, I'm completely wrong. It's Herbert Jenkins is the publisher. There you are. This is the second of the trilogy. Nice, isn't it? I paid £5 for this, which is obviously a bargain of the year. And it was published in 1966. They're still about, these copies, if you want them. You've just got to put yourself out and look for them. And be prepared to wait. He's talking about the years before the war, games played during the war. Of course, Estonia, I'm sure, was very hard hit. What European nation wasn't? What nation wasn't? Keres was building up to be one of the strongest players in the world. He had a very straightforward attacking style, but he didn't force it. Someone like Tal was at his happiest attacking. Keres was at his happiest playing, and it said when he analysed afterwards, he was like a kitten playing with a ball of knitting wool. Another thing he would do is when he found out the correct line in something, his opponent would say, "Well, let's go on then." And Keres would say, No, you don't understand. I want to look at it in some other ways. And he would look at it from every perspective, just mesmerised with the beauty of the game. There's been considerable reappraisal of the games played In 1948 tournament, 5 players, which I mentioned just now, from which Botvinnik was to emerge, and I'm not going into the politics of that, as world champion on the death of Alekhine. And Botvinnik came and went as world champion up to 1963, and for all of those years, Keres would have been hot on his collar, right on the chase. And in 1965, in the candidates, and to probably his mild surprise, having won the first game against Spassky, he lost the overall match, the qualification, and it put him out of the candidates for good and all. He never qualified for the candidates again, though he played in the Interzonal in 1973, but he only finished in the middle of the table at Leningrad. Well, there's many games here, some of which you may know, I know. At the highest level, game against Petrovic. I'll just show you the format, which is obviously a little bit old-fashioned, but I think it's lovely. There we are. See? Right, passing swiftly on. This is a book by Fred Reinfeld. This is Keres' games from 1931. These begin in 1931 as well, when Keres was a teenager. It goes right through till 1948, as I've just said twice already. Don't get put off, because you might see games in here which you've seen elsewhere. It's always nice to see them re-explained, or as you can see, there's no lack of explanation. And Dover books, published by Constable in this country, are still widely available, aren't they? Looking through here, 3 games against Smyslov, 8 games against Erva, 1 game against Botvinnik, 3 against Macinus, slightly surprising, and so on and so forth. He would have played in the Olympiad when Estonia stood as a country on its own merits, top board obviously. But when all of them were merged under the hammer and sickle, he played a very high board. For the USSR. Talks about the Keres, the Tarrasch variation, which he played against Capablanca, a move which was a strong favourite with the late Dr. Tarrasch in the early 90s. I can write that now. The 1890s, in fact, Tarrasch played it against all and sundry at Manchester in 1890. Subsequently, when Tarrasch had evolved one of the most important theories about terrain, which I won't about him, he was consistent enough to discard the text move. Despite this objective drawback, 3 knight to queen 2, or knight d2 if you prefer, has been played by Russian masters, by Spielmann, and by Keres with very fair success! Exclamation point. How true. And at each stage, Reinfeld gives interesting notes, talking about the development historically, and also giving tips on how to find the best moves. Let's read the introduction. The following is notable from several points of view. It was the crucial game. This is from Avro, the Dutch. They did aircraft as well, but the Dutch company. It was a crucial game which ultimately decided the allocation of the first and second prizes in what many consider the outstanding tournament of modern times. It was massively strong, and both Capablanca and Alekhine, though they competed, they had every right to compete, didn't do so well. Fine and Keres carried off the laurels. This is one of the most important theoretical games ever played with this opening. In it, Keres rehabilitates, paradoxically enough, an important defense to his favourite opening. Finally, the game illustrates the stresses and tensions of modern tournament play, with the resulting imperfections and inexactitudes. For all that, the reader cannot help but feel that this is a good fighting game, worthy of its momentous occasion on which it was contested. Will you try arguing with that? And this is the game Fine, Reuben Fine, the American psychoanalyst, psychologist, if you will, against the one and only Paul Petrovic Keres. There's that. This is a much newer book, and caused some confusion amongst readership, because the title is without punctuation. It's called Paul Keres Chess Masterclass. What, in fact, that means is Paul Keres's masterclass. But a number of people saw this and said, I don't know what it means. Well, there you are. The author is Neistat, who is not well known as a player, but as an author he is. He's also a theoretician, I think. If you look at the format of the book, once again, it's very relaxed. Lots of diagrams, explanations. This is not a game. This is not a best games collection, though it does contain good games by Keres. It is used as examples of certain themes: middle game, end game, and opening themes. It also has some good photos. So let's have a look at them and see what you get. Here's Keres playing Tau. See that? Yeah. Keres, slightly formally dressed, I suppose. And there's Keres again. Not quite a mugshot, but perhaps a little bit ill at ease, as perhaps he was for so many of his photos out of his life, which was a short one. When he died in 1975, he was coming back from Canada, I think, where he had not quite absconded, but I think he went without permission of the authorities to play in a couple of mediocre tournaments, and he won them both, but they were nothing special. And on his way back, either the aircraft had to pull in, or they touched down for refueling or whatever, have a meal, and he passed away, shockingly. Here's Keres with the Hungarian Grandmaster Laszlo Zalba. There they are, enjoying a knock-up. So George Thomas tells the story that he was in his hotel room. George, in his early days, was a formidable tennis ace. Wimbledon was on and he had no tickets, had no possible way of getting to the grounds. And even if he did, he couldn't have got in, could he, without any tickets? There was a knock on his hotel door, and it was Keres to say, I've got tickets. Are you coming? Why did he come? Well, there we are. I don't think there's any other photographs. This is the Keres Memorial. You can see Tao concentrating very hard. Can you see Tao? If you can't, I'll buy the book, and then there's a big picture of Keres, possibly a photograph, on high. Being the Russians, they do it with all due ceremony. So we'll just have a quick look through here. Opening chapters about combinations. I must be grateful to Paul. Had it not been for him, during the 1938-1948, I would have been unable to advance so far in the field of chess. In 1938, the tournament I mentioned, where he beat Capablanca in that French, which I explained, He finished ahead of me. It's a tournament, but not a fighter. It's unlikely that Keres was inferior to anyone in the world. And that comes from Botvinnik. So I'll give you more of that and see how far you get. This book was published in 1983 by Bergman and translated, always a sign of quality, by Ken Neat. It isn't a book I know very well. I've owned it for several years, but I can't say I've read it through because I haven't. But there it is now. You may like it. Now, this is much more up to date. This is a book by Franco from Everyman, who send me their books for review, and I'm very grateful to them. There is Keres. The Estonian Grandmaster Paul Keres is one of the greatest players in chess history, along with Victor Korchnoi. I might also add Rubinstein. It doesn't say that, but anyway. One of the best players to have never have gained the ultimate title of world champion. This brings together 38 of his finest games. Trying to select 38 Keres games is like, trying to make a collection of snowflakes or something, because there's just so many and they disappear because, that's good, this good, hang on, what about this? There's games played in all eras. 1971. I'm looking for anything earlier than 1931, I think. Which, not that it matters, I'm not finding. No, I'm not finding it. 2 games against Paul Westerinen. Lots of games with Keres as white. Against players as diverse as Beliavsky, Alekhine, Bogolyubov, Botvinnik, Capablanca, Federer, Geller, Gligorik, Ivkov, you name it. With very strong emphasis on king pawn openings. Lots of Lopez's with PPK on both sides of the colours. And about a dozen or more Sicilians. Franco is a Grand Master, not well known for his writings, not well known in Europe anyway, not by me, but nevertheless, it has the question and answer system. So they put in a little box of questions to sort of say, what do you think this foreshadows, or why do you think he played this in general terms? And you can answer it, or just read his answer, and then do as I do and say, I don't agree with that. You make your feelings heard. It's part of the fun of it, isn't it? These are all of them lessons in chess strategy and tactical awareness. He makes a statement, as Keres points out, white has fallen behind in development, and the 2 black knights have excellent squares in the centre. In compensation, white has 2 strong bishops. What would you play here? This is at move 12 in a French, which I recognise. Black has yet to castle, and white has castled long. There we are. White's castle's long. I'm never any good at holding these steady, let alone anything else. And it gives you a flavour. What would you do? What would you do indeed? I think that's against Botvinnik, actually. Let's have a look. I was right. Well, that was a good guess. This is from The Hague, Moscow, 1948. And Keres played 4, bishop d2, not a well-known line then or now. But nevertheless, it keeps body and soul together and offers a small gambit line, in as much that white doesn't immediately capture back on e4. The queen having gone to g4 and then takes on g7, gaining the pawn, but black has can snipe at the queen with rook g8. And it can either come back immediately or very soon. he talks about, yes, 2 knight e2 in the Sicilian. There, look, see. There. This book is published by Everyman, and when it came out, it was £20, nearly $30, which is a bargain. The size and weight of it, it's a hefty book. And you could get many, many months and years of interest in studying that. Now, here we have 2 volumes. I'm to be blamed here because I'm not sure if that's the only 2 they brought out. In a series some years back, Cadogan Chess, which became Bergman. No, it was Bergman, and then they changed the name because Robert Maxwell died as he did, behaved as he did for that matter. A good tournament records of Keres, statistics, lists of tournaments, lists of opponents. And then games grouped not by chronologically, but by openings classification. So it starts off with his game against Reshevsky, the American, as he was for most of his life. Started life in Europe and came across to the Americas. And he met Charlie Chaplin when they were both kids. A picture of him playing Keres, playing Tao. Tao's haircut takes some believing. Here he is in a jazz band in a cartoon with Lasker on the euphonium. Good fun. Who knows, perhaps 1 or 2 of them were instrumentalists, but as to that, I don't know. Well, here's Spassky, Keres, Petrosian, Botvinnik, Smyslov without a hat on, and Leonard Stein with a leather coat on. So there you are, Spassky and Smyslov and Stein don't have hats on. And Botvinnik, looking like a detective, as I would say. This is a book on closed games, volume 1 closed games. Queen's Gambit, so it's all Queen Pawn openings. Nimzo Indian systems, English and Reti openings. And here is its companion brother volume, if you will. It's by Vanush. And this is the hardback one, but it's the same but different. Not sure where I got this from. That's because it was cheap. That's translation by Frank Boyd, who was a postal master from the north. It starts off with the King's Gambit. Where better to start, one of my favourite openings. And then it goes through with E4, E5, Lopez, Sicilian, Alekhine. Lots of interest here. Rather odd fonts. I think the compositor got a bit muddled up, but it doesn't really matter. All the moves are there. Here we are. And that concludes our brief tour through the highways and byways of the life of Paul Petrovic Keres. I hope you've enjoyed it. This has been Chess Book Reviews 77. I'm James Pratt, and thank you for your time.